Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be talking about my freelance experience so far. I've been freelance for just over 6 months now, and I thought this would be a good point to share my experience so far, the good things and the bad things, the mistakes I've made, hopefully to help any of you that are looking into maybe going freelance or starting your own small business or anything like that. For the first part of the video I'm going to be talking about my experience, and then the second half of the video I'm going to be talking about advice and tips that I would give to you guys if you are wanting to go freelance and start your own business. So, my experience. I started my small business just over 6 months ago in November 2019. I set up as a sole trader and set up to do my own taxes on the Government UK website. The reason I decided to do my own taxes is basically because I wanted to keep the costs low for this first year, just because it's quite a risky business starting out on your own, and I just wanted to be able to have experience doing taxes myself too. I know a few other people that do their own taxes, and even though not many people like doing it, it's something that is achievable and doable, and yeah, it's just a good way of cutting some costs. So those were the first steps that I did. Then I moved on to designing my business branding. Now, I wouldn't say that my business branding is exactly how I want it to be. It's good and I think it represents my business and the kind of artwork that I create, but branding definitely isn't my forte. So I decided to keep things really simple, just a 2-colour logo, really simple, with my initials and then design underneath, so it's JC Design. I'll insert a picture of my logo here. I designed my branding on Photoshop and converted it to vector on Illustrator. This is just because I wanted to know that I can blow up my logo as big as I want it to be. Not that I'm going to be doing that really at the moment, but just so I have the peace of mind in knowing that I can make it large or small depending on the context, and that I won't have any problems with pixelation and low resolution. After I designed my branding and kind of thought about how I wanted my business to represent my art and what message I wanted my branding to convey, I then moved over to my social media, created a Facebook page, rebranded my Instagram, which was quite old and I'd used it while I was at university and when I was really experimenting with my style and everything. So I kind of rebranded Instagram, and then I also made a YouTube channel. I technically already had a YouTube channel that I was semi-active on, but I wanted to be more intentional. I haven't always been that committed to it, but I'm really trying to commit to it now. After I had updated my social media with my new branding, I then designed a website. I used Wix for my website, which I have had a really good experience with so far. Their customer service is fantastic and honestly couldn't fault it. It's so easy to use. This isn't sponsored, but I genuinely really like Wix. It's just a really nice way of creating a website without having to worry about the coding or anything like that. It's super easy to use. Alongside designing my website, I was also really building on my portfolio. When I first started my business in November, I'd literally just quit a full-time design job, and all the work that I had been creating for them belonged to them, which is generally how it tends to work in the industry, which meant that I didn't really have much work to show apart from my university work, which was still relatively current and new. I just wanted to make a whole load of new work that represented me and where I felt I wanted my work to be going and how I wanted to be expressing my creative voice. So as I was working on new stuff for my portfolio, I was then uploading that to my gallery on my website. Doing those things alongside each other was really useful. I was pretty happy with how that all turned out. After working on my portfolio a bit more and finishing up designing my website, I then decided to update my CV and e-portfolio, which I had been massively putting off. I don't know what it is about CVs, but it's so incredibly boring to do it. It always feels really forced when you're writing a CV. I don't know if any of you guys feel that way. Let me know in the comments if you do. So after a few days, I managed to get my CV and e-portfolio up to scratch. And once I was relatively happy with where my portfolio was, I then started sending my work and CV out to potential clients and customers. I had a bit of an up and down experience with this. I nearly landed a freelance job with a fashion fabrics company, but I didn't end up getting work with them, and I think it worked out for the best, to be honest, with the place that I was in at the time, and I really wanted to focus on building my portfolio more, and I feel like having that freelance job would have meant that I had a lot less time to develop my own work and grow as an artist in the style and the way that I wanted my work to progress and everything. So I think that worked out for the best, but at the time it was quite an excruciating experience. There was a lot of like back and forth thing. It felt like a lot of my time was wasted, but I'm not going to complain about it. It was a really useful experience nonetheless. I also sent my work out to local shops and local galleries and local cafes to try and get my work out there locally, because I feel like starting small is always a good thing. It helps to boost your confidence, and also you're a lot more likely to get accepted into local galleries and having your work in cafes and stuff like that than you are maybe to get a massive editorial job at your favourite magazine, for example. And that went really well for me, particularly in the early days, like the first 2 months. I had my work accepted in some local art shops. They're like shops that basically have a load of different independent artists work in there, and they take a commission from you when you make a sale, but it's just really amazing to see your work in a shop, like a physical shop. My work is still with one of these shops, but I'm thinking now about moving more into my own shop, like for example selling things online myself, because having that middleman of a shop owner selling and marketing your stuff isn't free. But I think the benefit is definitely getting the exposure and having your stuff out there, which may not be too easy doing yourself in the beginning. As I was sending my work out to local places, I was also starting to prepare for a Christmas craft fair, which was held in Loughborough, which is the town that I went to university in. This was my first craft fair on my own, doing it myself, representing my business. I've done craft fairs in the past with my mum, who's also an artist, and with my sister, who's also an artist, and that was a really lovely experience, but I was really nervous to do this completely by myself. I spent the whole of December, as well as doing all these other things that I've just mentioned, working on prints, originals, clay products and cards that I could sell. This was a real learning curve for me, because even as craft fairs can be quite small events compared to design fairs and trade shows, it really taught me a lesson about time management. I massively overestimated what I could get done and underestimated the time that it would take me to do those things. So I ended up having a real stress just a week before the craft fair, trying to cram absolutely everything in that I wanted to get done. Through the skin of my teeth, managed to do it in the end, but I definitely would prepare myself and give myself a lot more time next time. The Christmas craft fair was probably the last larger business venture that I did before Christmas. I then took a break for Christmas, and in January moved to Oxford with my husband. When I moved to Oxford, I did a similar thing to what I did when I first started my business when I was in Leicestershire. I went to loads of local shops and cafes, gave out my business cards, introduced myself to people, and yeah, really tried to just get integrated and stuck into the local community of artists. Firstly for networking purposes and to find new stockists and places that would maybe take my work or be interested in collaborating with me and working with me, but also just to meet new people. Moving to a new city is really scary, and I feel like it's the kind of situation where it's very easy to isolate yourself and think, oh, I'll meet people later, I'll go and do things later. The more and more you have that mindset, the harder it is to go out and meet people. So as soon as we moved, I really made the effort to get myself out there and meet new people, which was definitely worth it. A local ethical cafe responded, and I'm going to be doing a solo exhibition in their cafe in September. This is assuming that COVID is a little bit more under control by then, but I was really excited that the owner got back to me and was really keen for me to have my work up there. We may even be doing a launch night just so that there's a bit of publicity and marketing for them and for me as well, which I'm so excited about. I feel so grateful, but obviously this is all depending on COVID. And January and February was really the time as well that I was getting into doing commissions for people and selling some of my products to people. Whilst a few design studios have got back to me and have taken me on as a freelancer, because of COVID there's been a lot less work, which has meant that I haven't really sold anything yet, because all of the sales trips and trade shows are all on hold until COVID is out the window. So the industry is kind of paused in a way, which is quite frustrating. So the commissions and product sales have been my main source of income for the past 4 months. I've been absolutely blown away by people's generosity and willingness to support my business and me as an artist. It really does mean the world to me, and I'm so grateful for every commission that I get. Working on commissions and product sales has taught me a lot about dealing with clients and really working to a brief and trying to achieve something that somebody is really going to love, but also within my own style, so I can keep promoting my business and sort of the style and aesthetic of my design work through these commissions. So to go a bit more in detail about the design studios that I'm working for 2 printed textiles design studios. Because this is my background, I have been able to get work in this area quite easily just by sending out my portfolio to people, and people seeing that I also have industry experience behind me has also been really helpful. So this has looked like me creating prints and patterns for different seasons. I've been sent mood boards by the design studios to then influence my print designs so that they fit within that trend and that aesthetic and style and colour palette, because often it will be clients looking for these things through the studios, and then the studios are then able to inform the freelancers of this and the things that people are looking for. So yeah, this has been a really good experience in working to deadlines and having to work pretty long hours, been getting me used to having to do that, which I think is just part of being a freelancer. You have to kind of accept the fact that your hours may be slightly different to, say, somebody who has a full-time job, which is kind of weird at first, being used to a full-time job and then going to freelance and realising that actually all of these things are on your own back. You have to get your deadlines done, and if you don't get them done, it looks really bad on you, and you really don't want a bad reputation in the industry you're working in. So it's definitely a lot more pressure than working a full-time job for somebody else in some ways, but I absolutely love having the freedom to be my own boss, set my own hours, take days off that I want to take off. It's just so much more freeing and I love it. There's definitely been a fair share of ups and downs, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons in my opinion. So that pretty much sums up briefly my first 6 months of freelancing and being my own boss, being a small business owner. I really hope that's been insightful and helpful to you guys. I'm now going to talk about advice that I would give to anybody wanting to become their own boss and be a freelancer. Tip number 1 would be to make sure that you can afford to be a freelancer. I know this sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but it is incredibly critical that you are aware of the financial risks of being freelance. I've seen a lot of other freelance artists and illustrators advising that you have at least 2 months rent saved up, so that if you have any emergencies or you're not making the money that you need to make ends meet, that you've got backup savings that you can then rely on. I would personally say have at least 4 months rent saved up. It might seem a bit extreme, but to me running out of money is the kind of emergency and situation that you really don't want to be in. I would particularly give this advice if you are single, or if you are living by yourself, or you're living in a house share or something like that. Particularly then it's a lot more risky. For me, I've been incredibly blessed to be married whilst I'm setting up as a small business owner. My husband has a full-time job, and although it's not perfectly well paid, it definitely enables us to pay rent and to be able to afford food and bills and everything like that. So he's been incredibly generous in saying that he's totally fine with supporting me now until my business picks up a bit more and then I can start contributing. It's something that's quite frustrating for me personally, because I feel like I always want to make sure that I'm contributing to us and to him. So it's quite a challenge if you're someone that likes to feel independent and like you're able to provide for yourself. But yes, I feel incredibly lucky to be in this situation, and I'd say if you're in a similar situation, it's still really good to have savings. I had a lot of life savings that I've invested into my business. I hope that makes sense. Basically, just in a nutshell, make sure that you're financially sound and you have sufficient funds to rely on when setting up, because it is a really unreliable and unpredictable career, particularly in the beginning. Tip number 2 would be to make sure that you get out of the house on a regular basis to see family and friends, and even just for a walk on your own. I found that being inside all of the time and working from home, as amazing and as good as it is, and as well as it does suit me, I do find that I start to be affected mentally if I'm staying in the house all the time. It tends to give me low moods and low motivation and a lack of inspiration as well. So getting out really does help to recharge and refresh you, and even though it doesn't seem like completely necessary sometimes, I really do think it is, and this is me giving myself this advice too, because I still don't get out of the house enough. Another thing you can do linked to this is see if in your local area there are any communal spaces or local art spaces where other artists might meet up and work together. There are definitely quite a few in Oxford, but yeah, these things are a really good way of meeting other artists and like-minded people, and yeah, just to get some company if you're feeling a bit bored and lonely and just kind of feel like you need a change of scenery, or yeah, just to get out the house a bit and take your work with you. I think that's a really good alternative to working at home if you feel you need to get out of the house. Tip number 3, make sure that you're okay with working for yourself, and by this I mean make sure that you are self-motivated and have a lot of discipline in motivating yourself to work. For me, I'm an incredibly self-motivated person, and I really always have been. When I was at school, I found it pretty easy to get on with my work and just get things things done. But even for me, I find motivating myself as a self-employed person really challenging at times. So I'd say if you are thinking about going freelance and being your own boss, it's really important that you are self-motivated and are able to stay on task fairly well. Tip 4, even when you don't have any work, keep building up on your portfolio. I can't stress this enough, and even though it can feel at times like you're wasting time and you're not doing anything important, always having a current and up-to-date portfolio that represents you in the current moment and your current creative outlook and creative handwriting is so important. Documenting this on social media like Instagram, Facebook or YouTube is a really good way of sharing your portfolio with others, and it's a good way of keeping yourself accountable to creating new work and always having an up-to-date portfolio. It can feel really demotivating if you haven't got any client work or if you haven't got any commissions, and it's really easy to feel sorry for yourself. But I think in those times it's an amazing opportunity to build on your creative skills, learn a new skill that you have been always wanting to do and incorporate into your business but haven't had the time to. Yeah, I think it's really important to value the time you have and the time you've been given and the different seasons of your business and freelance career. And tip number 5, my last tip, would be to set yourself a really good weekly routine by either using a planner or a diary or Google Calendar. This is something that I really need to improve on myself, but I know that whenever I have a routine each week and a timetable each week, it really helps me to stay on track, stay motivated, and to tackle each task one thing at a time. When you don't have the list of things that you need to get done written down anywhere and you don't have any routine or schedule, it can be really demotivating and it can be really easy to make up excuses and procrastinate when you don't have that clear structure there. I also think this is a good way of preventing overworking and obsessing over work. This is something that I find really hard because I absolutely love art. It's really easy for me to overwork and to not stop, but having a schedule and a set timetable is a really good way of seeing, okay, it's 5 o'clock, my day is finished, I'll carry on this task tomorrow. I'm really not perfect at this, I really haven't got this sorted at all. It's just a really good goal and thing to have set in place to try and help you to do better and to try and help you to take care of yourself too, which is obviously really important. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys have found it really helpful and informative, and I hope it helps to encourage any of you who are wanting to start up your own business and maybe just want a bit of an insight into somebody else's experience. I couldn't recommend it enough. And yeah, if any of you guys have any further questions about this topic, do feel free to leave me a comment below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more from me, and I shall see you guys in my next video. Bye!